Good morning. Yesterday, Wendy Lambert was talking about her grandparents, how much she loved them. I've heard her talk about her grandparents many times. And I knew that one of the things she loved so much about her grandparents was the Cincinnati Reds. They were always watching the games, and Wendy developed a love for the Cincinnati Reds and baseball. She's talked about it many times through the years. It's a special memory in her life. She remembers her grandparents and that love that they have shared. As I heard her talk about her grandparents and that touchstone for her remembering, it made me think about my grandparents and some of those things that made me remember them and how much they loved me. And one of those things is a chocolate pie. My dad got 2 weeks off for vacation every year. And every year we got in our car and we drove to Kentucky, to Paducah. Both sets of grandparents lived there and would spend 1 week with one set and 1 week with the other week. Well, it just so happened that my nanny, who was my dad's mom, she was a great cook. And the thing she was known for cooking? Chocolate pie. My dad loved chocolate pie. And so every year when we arrived and the family was coming to see Nanny, I can be assured that very first night we'd be having a meal and there'd be chocolate pie for dessert. It was great, which made me understand later on why my dad loved chocolate pie. He'd grown up with it. And so my mom learned to make chocolate pie. And you've heard me tell our tradition how every year on Christmas Eve, we would come home from church and we would have barbecue and chocolate pie. That became such a special memory for me. And it's something we still do to this day as we continue on with that Christmas Eve tradition, barbecue and chocolate pie. Well, I remember there came a year. Marcia and I had gotten married. My brother Steve had been so very busy in college. I was serving a little small country church. We were all three so busy now that we hadn't been on any of those family vacations in a number of years and hadn't been to see our grandparents. So my brother Steve, Marcia, and I, we all just jumped in the car and the three of us drove to Kentucky. And when we got there to see Nanny, what do you think she had for us when we arrived? Chocolate pie. And we ate it that night and it was so good. I mean, we scarfed it down. And I'll never forget, she then said, "All right, tomorrow morning, what do you want for breakfast?" And Steve and I kind of popped off and said, "I think chocolate pie." We meant it as a joke because it was so good and we'd enjoyed it that night. But the next morning when we got up, what do you think there was for breakfast? Chocolate pie. Whenever I wind up seeing a chocolate pie, I wind up thinking about my nanny. And I think about my dad and my mom and the love that flowed down through our family. And you could see it demonstrated in that act of love. There's something important about remembering those acts of love that people did for you. It's why you and I come to church every week, so we can remember those acts of God's love that we see through the stories of Jesus. It's why we tell those stories week after week after week, why you and I have heard them for years, but we hear them again, because it's how we remember God's love for us. And it has been passed on down the generations, and we are able to celebrate it. This summer, when you're taking off on vacation to be with your family, if you're going to be with your children, your grandchildren, you're going to wind up maybe being with your brothers and sisters, maybe you're going to be with your special friends. Just remember, there are those things that you can do, like playing catch, like I talked about on Monday, or whether it's going to wind up being watching the Cincinnati Reds baseball game, or whether it's baking a chocolate pie. There are the little things that you can do that will be remembered as people thinking, they really did love me. And when you do those kind of things, you're assuring that you will be remembered forever. I hope you have a very special weekend.